Chapter 1 The Wolf I woke up not being able to recall what happened or where I was. I opened my eyes to see a fire in front of my face, feeling the warmth of the fire on my skin. I asked myself, where am I? I looked around, seeing a thick forest with several bushes and, to my surprise, a pair of red glowing points in the dark on the other side of the fire. Startled, I sat up quickly from the leaf bed I was lying on. The red points moved towards the fire and revealed a large, wolf-looking figure, about 4 feet tall, with grey fur, and the red points turned out to be its eyes. The wolfish figure growled softly at me, and then it sat down by the fire across me. "Hello," I said in a curious tone. The wolf figure looked at me with understanding in its eyes. "Do you understand me?" I asked it. The wolf simply nodded and kept looking at me. "Wow, am I dreaming?" I said as I rose to my feet. "Well, I guess I have to find out where in the world I am, don't I?" I looked down at myself and saw I was wearing a black tattered robe with short sleeves and reaching down to my ankles. I was also wearing a pair of heavy boots with iron plating. I looked around and noticed something in the middle of the fire. It looked like a hilt of a tool or a weapon. I decided to try and get it, so I looked around for a branch in a nearby bush. Luckily, I found one that seemed small enough to maybe get this handle out of the flames. I poked around in the flames to get some burning sticks out of the way. I was able to get enough of them away to get my hands near the hilt, so I grabbed it and pulled it out of there as quickly as possible. I got some minor burns, but I got out what seemed to be a sword of some sort. The blade was cold, even after being in the fire, and seemed to be of a foreign design, like a sword called a katana, which I had heard stories about during my childhood. The wolf watched as I did all this with a curious look on its face, not moving from where he sat. I looked at the wolf and asked, "Did you know this was here?" The wolf nodded and walked to my side, looking at the sword and barked happily. "So, where do you suppose we go then?" asked the wolf. It looked around and started walking the bushes. I followed, sword in hand. An hour later we arrived at a clear water pond surrounded by trees, mostly oaks. We walked up to it and I looked into it, seeing a clear reflection of myself. My hair was ruffled and pitch black in color. I had a full beard, also pitch black with a few grey stripes here and there, and my eyes were a blood red color. Not just my iris or pupil, the entirety of my eyes were blood red. I jumped back and fell on my back from the reflection in shock. This caused the wolf to look at me with concern in his eyes. The wolf walked to my side and seemed to wonder what was wrong. I replied sorry, as didn't expect to have eyes like these. I then sat up and patted the wolf on its head. The wolf lies down next to me and put his head in my lap, and so I went on to stroke him on the head and along his grey fur for a while. About 1 hour later. "Let's have a drink, shall we?" I said as I got up and walked over to the pond. The wolf followed me and put its muzzle in the water to drink, while I cupped my hands to scoop up some water for me to drink. The water was fresh and soothing. Realizing I had no idea when I had last something to drink, I drank as much as I could. When we had both gotten our share of water, I asked the wolf, "Where do you suppose we should go now?" The wolf looked at me with thoughtful eyes, then looked a few seconds later as it had gotten a very good idea. The wolf's expression almost seemed human then. The wolf nudged at my side as if it wanted me to follow, so I did, and into the forest we went. A few minutes later we arrived at what looked like a well-preserved ruin of a medieval fortress. I looked in astonishment at how well it looked. Only a few rocks had been knocked out of the wall, and a few vines were only halfway up the wall. We saw the gates, old wooden gates of an old design, with partially rusted iron outlining. The wolf walked up to it and put its paw on the left gate door. It then looked over to me and seemed to want my help, so I went over to the right one and pushed on it, while the wolf pushed the other and it slowly opened. What was inside was quite unexpected. We saw a courtyard with green grass and dirt, quite usual, but in the middle of it was a solid stone platform, about 15 feet in width and 1.5 feet in height. In the middle of it was a black pillar that seemed to give off a red glow, which was very unusual. We looked at it for a few minutes. I was in awe at how this thing was glowing somehow, but I knew that it was glowing. I could clearly see it, and I know it was an hallucination. The wolf was there, as real as everything else. The wolf took a few cautious steps inside and I followed. It was the only thing I knew to do at the time, since it seemed a sure thing to do. He had helped until now. We were thrown back as we had taken a few steps inside. The light from the pillar was now pulsating and sending out what seemed like waves of lightning and blood-red light. I landed on my back, dropping the sword right outside the gate and skidded for a few feet before flipping over and landing on my stomach, hurting my head in the process, but the wolf landed on his feet but skidded about 10 feet before stopping. I was knocked out at the moment, but I woke up to the howl of a wolf. Slowly I opened my eyes and saw the grey wolf standing by me, howling to the now light blue sky. I started to try and move. Luckily I had no injuries, so I was able to roll onto my back and sit up. The wolf noticed me and jumped on me and licked my face. I was surprised and started to laugh, and trying to tell it to stop between my bouts of laughter, and eventually it did stop, and I was able to sit up, and the wolf looked so happy. So I stroked the wolf on the side of its head. It liked it, as it was wagging its tail. "Alright, what should I call you?" I asked the wolf. It looked at me inquisitively. "How about, Mighty?" The wolf seemed to think about it, then barked in approval. "Mighty it is," I said, hugging the wolf around the neck. Mighty gave a friendly growl and leaned in my embrace. I let him out of my grasp and stood up to look at the fortress again. Everything seemed as it was yesterday, but the pillar was gone, and in its place was something that looked like a gate, crested with a skull. It didn't look to go anywhere, but I started walking towards it. In mid-stride, however, I saw my sword and picked it up, then went back towards the gate. Mighty followed my lead.